Now, your teacher might have taught you this term, but you don't quite feel like you understand what it means or how to analyze it. And that is exactly what I'm going to cover in this video. So let's do this. Freytag's pyramid is given that name because it was come up with by a guy called Freytag, but he really isn't important here. Essentially, Freytag's pyramid is one of the most common plot structures used in story. That's predominantly in novels. Plays tend to have a slightly different structure, though they can follow this, and poems obviously don't follow this kind of structure. Freytag's pyramid basically looks like the diagram you can see right now. Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement. So it's this basic idea that the structure of a plot will start by building up to a big point and then easing back down again. First thing you need to know to understand Freytag's pyramid is what all those different terms on the pyramid mean. To start with, you've got exposition. Now, exposition is just another way of saying beginning. So it's where the writer introduces the character, the setting, and the conflict. And if you're not familiar with what the conflict of a story is, check out my video on that. Essentially, it's where the writer sets up everything you need to know, ready for the rest of the plot to make sense. You then have the rising action. Now, this is triggered by an inciting incident and it escalates the story. An inciting incident is something that happens to start our character on this journey. Why are they doing whatever they are doing in this plot? Okay, so for example, I literally can't think of any plots of any famous TV shows or films right now, so I'm just going to make up my own. Why is Harry Potter choosing to get a perm? What's the inciting incident? Well, the inciting incident could be that he sees Ron's perm and feels a strong sense of jealousy. So the rising action begins and we have Harry Potter going to the hairdresser. And the rising action is the build-up of that story. It's Harry booking his appointment, walking to the hairdresser, waiting to get sat down, telling the hairdresser he needs a perm, all that build up. Meanwhile, your climax is your peak tension. Now, a lot of students misunderstand climax. They think climax means excitement, drama, explosions, car crashes, zombies. They think a climax has to be something huge and dramatic. But that's not what it's about. It's about tension. Whatever the story has been building up to, that thing it's been building up to happens. So in my plot of Harry Potter getting a perm, the minute he gets the perm is our climax. That's not especially dramatic or exciting, but it is what I've been building up to, and it is therefore my climax. Meanwhile, your falling action is everything that happens after that climax. Any consequences that come as a result of Harry Potter successfully getting his perm. Part of that can include subplots and mini conflicts. This is more likely to be true for full novels. It's less likely for short stories. Short stories don't usually manage subplots and mini conflicts. But let's say my novel about Harry Potter getting a perm also had a subplot of Harry and Ron being jealous of one another and competing via their hairstyles. Perhaps that subplot would be resolved once Harry's got his perm and Ron and Harry see each other and they both got their perms, and then they hug each other, and then it starts to rain and they both start to cry together as they realize now their perms are destroyed. So that's your falling action there. It's your subplots start to be resolved. It's what happens after the climax. We then have your denouement, which is a French word that just means the ending, or it can also be called the resolution, how the story is resolved, how does it end. Now, there's two main ways it can resolve. Way number one is obviously everything's tied up neatly in a bow. You get all your answers, there's your happy ever after, things seem to be brought back to a nice, happy, normal. Your other way is your cliffhanger. Things are left up in the air, perhaps because there's another book coming, or because your writer just wanted to kill you by leaving it on a sense of unanswered questions and mystery there as well. So resolution doesn't necessarily mean everything's happily tied up. It can also be cliffhangers, but there is a question of why have they not resolved things? Why have they left it on a cliffhanger? The final thing I want us to consider is how you actually analyze Freytag's pyramid. pyramid. And there are two main ways to go about it. First of all, this assumes you're dealing with an extract where you don't have the entire pyramid. So you've just got the beginning or the end or the climax. And in that case, you need to establish for your extract, and you might get told this, a lot of examples do tell you what section of a story it's come from. What section is your extract from? Is your extract the exposition? Is your extract the denouement? Whatever. Once you know what section of Freytag's pyramid it is, you then know the purpose, whether that be introducing setting and character like in the exposition, or whether that be escalating, building tension as with the rising action, or whether that be the peak tension as with climax. So you know the purpose of your extract, and you can then analyze how your text meets that purpose. How does it introduce your setting and character and so on? How does it build tension if it's rising action? How does it create peak tension if it's your climax? That typically means you're going to be analyzing language. If you're dealing with an exam question where you're not allowed to analyze language and you just have to analyze structure, so you're just trying to analyze Freytag's pyramid because that is structure, in that case you're going to be aiming to analyze it through your structural devices, the information given through narrative viewpoint and writer's focus and things like that. And I have videos on both of those techniques if you're not familiar with how to analyze those. The second thing, so that's if you only have a section that an extract is from. If you've got the whole story, so let's say you're studying an entire novel, there you're going to look at how key ideas develop across the section. So something that is established in the exposition, how does that idea develop in the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the denouement? So that's your classic like character development as the story goes on and things like that. Thematic development, how a theme has developed. So in the exposition it was like this, versus at the point of the climax it's like that. Specifically with Freytag's pyramid, you're going to be looking at how the different sections interplay with one another. So you're going to be specifically looking at how something you learn in the exposition impacts something you understand in the rising action, how they build on one another, how those different sections build on one another. You also want to be paying attention in case your story has played with Freytag's pyramid. For example, it's a story that starts with the climax, or it's, you know, and everything else is looking at the after effect and there's a flashback to before the climax. Does it play around with the structure in any way? If you have got one of those stories, then you can look at that, how it breaks Freytag's pyramid on purpose and for a reason, and what is that reason? Why have they done it in a different order to what the pyramid is supposed to be? And that question of why is the general idea with analyzing Freytag's pyramid. Why is that what is introduced in the exposition? Why does that happen in the rising action? Why is that the climax? Why? Why has the writer told it in this order? How does telling the story in that order serve the wider effect they're trying to have on their reader and serve the theme that they are trying to